you. Thank you very much, Philip, for having me. Well, I'll start out with my quick bio. Again, my name is Andrew Needles, and I've been doing, I don't want to say new product development for probably 20 years. Started out a lot with my own. I do electronic design mostly, specializing in analog design. For the past 7 years or so, I've been doing alternative energies, almost specifically because that's where my field is. I actually developed a new form of alternative energy, and I've made every mistake in the book. So hopefully you can learn from me on that one. And this presentation is designed not just for the product or the service that you do, but it's also to understand that it entails a lot of also your business. The value that you place on your product also dictates the value that your business has. So I don't want to say that I'm going to use those words interchangeably, but I want you to understand they are very much connected. As far as my bio, I think that's pretty much it that's necessary. So I'll move straight into it.
Great.
See, I'm going to share my screen here. Give a second while it loads. I'm assuming everybody can see that?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Well, it says loading right now. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Let me know when you see the first page.
Right. What's your value?
I know. Perfect. I just want to make sure we don't have any delays, lag time here. So what is your value? That is the question. And it's not because I want to focus on your value. I want to focus on the idea that everything has value. So first things first is the first thing anyone doing business has to address is the value of not only the product or service, but also their time, their brand, their reputation. This is only the start to identifying the worth of what you were trying to do. Everything has value, and that needs to be accounted for. A few things to consider: are you manufacturing or producing your own product or service? Specifically, are you making your own product? Is it your service that you're doing? Or are you reselling someone else's product or service? Think of it this way. Are you buying things and selling them on Amazon? Are you a plumber that it's your business, or are you a plumber for Mike Diamond, for example? You're contracted out, if you will. These will adjust that value of whatever it is that you do. One very important topic is how saturated is the market with your type of product or service. If you're the only one doing it, you are able to dictate your price a little bit differently than if everybody else is doing it as well. And it also may come down to the idea that you may not want to do that service. For example, if you have a dry cleaning business and you move into a place that there's a dry cleaning business on every corner, you're not going to be doing it. It's kind of like opening up a coffee shop next to 20 Starbucks. May not work. Next is, what is the current value or price of your product or service in the market? So if you're selling products on Amazon, as an example, and everybody is selling them at $20, well, that pretty much dials you in for what your price point is. And you may or may not be able to make money with that. So you have to understand what's out there, and you have to understand the market. That's huge. Are you buying enough in materials or goods to get the best deal? Now, this is something that I've had contention with a lot of people when it comes down to a few different aspects. But there is an idea of wholesale pricing. There is an idea of buying from China and getting 10,000. My partner owns a machine shop, and where its minimum order quantities are 1,000, 5,000, 10,000. So you have to be able to order enough. Otherwise, you are just buying on Amazon for $20, as opposed to actually getting wholesale prices or huge discounts so that you can actually make money off of it. Now, done correctly, if you've done that, if you actually have a minimum order quantity that you've been able to get, you can order 10,000 pieces, for example. Do you have the storage for it? If you don't have, and that actually will dictate the price of your product or your service. If you need And then keep in mind, if you're selling 10,000, or if you bought 10,000 units of pencils, it doesn't take up a lot of space, but you can't buy 10,000 Maseratis and store them in your garage. So storage is a critical conversation that has to be had. Now, the next question is, what is the true cost of selling your product or service? I meet so many new entrepreneurs, especially because I do a lot of consulting work. I meet so many people who always want to say, well, it's just my time. It's not like I'm paying employees, so they don't count their time. That's not true. You have to count every aspect of everything involved to get a accurate value of whatever it is that you're selling or that you're doing. You have to count for everything. And I'll use the example of a hairdresser. During COVID, they had to clean out everything, right? They had to wipe down surfaces. They had to buy plastic. All of that has to be put into the value simply because it costs money. Your time costs money. That's the reason why. That's one reason why prices went up. You saw COVID surcharges. Everything has to be accounted for. And again, most new people getting into business never account for their time. But what happens when you now hire employees? If you're paying them $20 an hour, well, that's $20 more than what you put into the process originally. So you have to account for everything, especially time. The next critical point is, are you leaving room for wholesale, retail sales, inventory reduction, etc.? If you're selling something for $100, typically, and I'm going to use a very generic, wholesale would be $50. So if you were buying something, let's say at $75 and trying to sell it at $100, well, you can't do wholesale at $50. You can't even do it at $75. You have to be able to leave room for all those gaps. That hopefully that's what you're in business for, is to make money. So you have to be willing to price your product or your service so that you can expand, you can grow, you can actually build your business. And certainly one of the most important parts, is marketing and advertisement. If people do not know what you're doing, you won't be doing it very long. That's just fact. So if you're trying to sell something and you're trying to minimize you think that it's too expensive to sell at such point, you're not going to make enough money to be able to advertise it, to market it, to let people know that you're doing it, and you will fail. So you have to keep all those in mind. Now, one important part is, what kind of business do you want to be? And this comes down to, again, the product, the service. Do you want to be a mom and pop store? Do you just want to have a breakfast place that you run? Do you want to make enough money to support your family, put the kids through college, save up for retirement? If that's what you want to be, fantastic. There's nothing wrong with that, but you do have to take that into account. Or do you want to be Amazon? Do you want to have 9 billion products and I mean, let's put it this way. Jeff Bezos paid, I think, $1.4 billion in taxes last year. That's because he made that much money to pay that much in taxes. It's incredible how much money he made. And it's not because he was undercharging. It's because he was actually charging way too much, to be honest with you. But you have to decide what kind of business you want to be so that you can dial in your business plan. And that does revolve around whatever product or service you're doing. Now, the reason why I brought up that last point is because if you can make money doing what you love, are you really ever working? That's what everyone strives to do. No one wants to make a ton of money and hate what they do every day. But nobody wants to make very little money, even if they love what they do. You still got to put food on the table. You still got to pay the rent. You still have to do those things. So you're looking to make as much money as you can doing what you love. But if you don't know your value, if you don't know the extra costs, if you don't know the true costs, if you don't plan on evolution, if you don't plan on everything that we're going to talk about, you won't be doing it very long. And then you won't be doing what you love. And that's the biggest problem. Now, I mentioned wholesale. I said $100, I said $50. So buying for $1 and selling for $2. That generically, that's somewhat correct. I don't necessarily follow it. And it doesn't apply for every product. But that idea of selling it for $100, if you work your way backwards, and wholesale at $50, that's fine. So if it costs you $25, wholesale would be 50, and then $100, let's say online or at a store. Fantastic. Doesn't always work that way. It's a lot more complicated than that, but on one aspect, it tends to be true. Just don't hold fast to that philosophy. So it's a warning more so than anything else. Now, let's say you're selling organic lipstick. Did you account for marketing costs, models, or even celebrity endorsements? What if Oprah wants you to donate to the whole audience? So if it costs you $10 to make, and you think, well, I'm just going to sell it for 15. Okay, well, you already killed the wholesale conversation. But how much money and how much time would it take to be able to save up for advertising, marketing? How much does the model cost to show off your lipstick? How much does an infomercial cost, for example? How much does Google AdWords cost? That $10 lipstick, you can't sell for $15, not if you plan on growth. Again, if no one knows you're in business, you won't be doing it for very long. You have to make sure people know. Everybody has to know what you do. And that can be expensive. Now, let's say you are selling fitness equipment or even a gym membership. Does the cost of your product or your service account for the marketing and endorsements? Advertising alone cuts into the budget far more than most new entrepreneurs realize. Do a little bit of research on, Google it, obviously. But do some research on how much it costs for a celebrity tweet or Instagram mention. We're talking minimum $60,000 up to $150,000. It's expensive, and that's just that. And that lasts for seconds, minutes, and then people have to go back through. Yes, it can go viral, but you get the idea. It's a lot of money. So again, if no one knows you're in business, you won't be in business for very long. So you have to price your product, your service, whatever it is, to account for having enough money to advertise. Now, this is critical. So be honest, would you hire you? Imagine if you were selling, an example I always come up in my head for some reason, probably because I'm a car guy, is if you were selling a muffler. It's the best muffler for a car in the world. It has the sound you think is perfect. It gets you better gas mileage. It gets you better horsepower. It is God's gift to mufflers. You go to AutoZone. Take a look. What do they have? Your muffler costs $300. The muffler that's on the shelf costs $65. Which one do you want to buy? And even though the one's perfect, it's a heck of a lot more money. You have to know the market that you're in, and you have to be honest about it with respect to, would you buy your product? You know, are most people like you, and would they choose the $65 muffler, or would they get the $300 muffler? You have to be willing to look at it from an outside perspective. Most new business people that I meet, they think their product is the greatest. It's the most wonderful thing God ever invented. And then you look at it and you can't see what they see. So be honest and always ask the question, even next month, 10 months from now, whatever it is, repeatedly, would you hire you? Would you buy your product? And this is a huge thing. No matter how good you are at what you do, no one wants to see you pull into their driveway in this truck, unless you're going to a person who actually rebuilds this truck. The critical part of it is this. I got into an argument with a marketing expert, supposedly, and it was actually over a friend. He's a tile guy. The man is amazing, does amazing work on tile. And the lady who was supposedly this marketing guru said, you need to advertise. You need to you need to let everybody know what you do. And I agree. And then she said, you need to put even just one of those magnetic signs on your truck so they know to go to your Facebook page. And I was like, nope. Just flat out no. And we argued about it. She's like, no, you're crazy. I went to school for this. I know this. And I go, you're missing one thing. I go, I don't want him treating my kitchen, my floor, my bathroom like he treats his truck. It was a fairly new truck. but it was beat up, dents and dings, and it looked like junk. I go, you don't want people to know what you do if you're driving that thing, because how do I know you're not going to treat my house like you treat your truck? And I told him, I go, at the very least, fix the truck or get a new one. I go, you are working in a high-end area where people don't want to see that. They want to know you're good, but you got to find another way. But that truck was not going to work. So presentation is very important, and it isn't just about the value of your product. It's also about your brand, your reputation, your name. All of that plays a factor. Now, to get back to this one, you just saved a bunch of money on 10,000 pieces. That's awesome. Do you have the storage for it? And what does 10,000 pieces look like for your product? And the reason why this is critical is because how much is storage? How much is a storage facility? It's not $65 anymore. Now you're looking at $100 for a small one, or if you're going to go out of the area, how much is gas? So if you're selling a product, storage is huge. It's all about storage. You have to get the best deal. But how much is that storage facility? How much is the shelving? How long are you planning on moving the product well enough and fast enough? When I was a parts and sales manager at AutoZone when I was a kid, I knew the price per square foot of almost everything in the store. And when I first started, it was all the end caps. And I remember my manager at the time, he's like, no, we got to dust this. I go, no, we need to sell it. I go, product should not be on the shelf long enough to gather dust. It means we're losing money. And you have to remember, everything has a value. And if you're not moving products that's sitting there, you're wasting money. Now, this is one thing that I think most people don't realize. And I know this is more about business than it is about product, but if you do it correctly, if you get the value of your product, the value of your service to its true value, it's going to be worth something. And then once you've been in business for whatever length of time, you want to leave the business, and you want to leave it when it's actually worth its highest value. But you need to start thinking about an exit plan the day you start thinking about business. You don't want to be in business forever unless that's what you want to do. You want to be at a mom and pop place for the next 20 years, fantastic. But always think of an exit plan and start doing it now. The reason being is because ultimately, if you don't set the value of it up correctly, if you don't think it's worth that much because you didn't do it correctly, how do you expect somebody else to think it's worth that much? And that's not just true for the exit plan, but it's also true for the customer. And remember, you can't really raise your prices. It takes a lot of work. That is one of the most hated things in business is actually increasing prices. So you can have a sale, but you can't really increase your price, not unless it's extraordinary. And think of it this way. You go out to a restaurant, you still see COVID surcharges. That's because they didn't want to increase the price of the actual service, the meal itself. And that still went up. And people hate it. It's caused people not to go out as much. The first thing that was done was cutbacks. Then prices went up. People hate raising prices. So get the value correct right off the bat. And then remember, always think about an exit plan. Now, part of it is this. Always understand that evolution happens. Change happens. We went through a year of, well, now going into 2 years of COVID, where everything has changed. Think of the restaurants that didn't have outside dining and don't have room for it. How many of them went out of business? And then all of a sudden, you have places with huge parking lots but small storefronts. They're doing extremely well because they had outdoor seating. So always think of the possibility for change. And that actually will allow you to adjust your prices as well when change happens. But you want to be able to get that price correct right off the bat. And we'll still go into a few details, but pop quiz. Can anyone tell me what the denomination of the bill that was on the first page was? And go ahead and unmute if you want to answer the question. But What was it?
$5.
Perfect. Who said that?
Aliyah,
fantastic. I love people who pay attention. There's a reason for that $5 bill, and it doesn't mean that your product is actually worth $5. But why the $5? In the beginning, I said you buy something for $1, you sell it for $2. That's been general for most people forever. I hate it. My multiplier tends to be a minimum of 5. If I buy it for $1, I have to sell it for 5. Granted, if you have more than one product, more than one service, you can have some loss leaders. You can have different ones that go up, ones that go down. You have to understand the market. But I do not like anything less than 5. It's not always possible, but when I first start out with a product, I look at it and I say, okay, generically, this thing's going to cost me $10. I've got to sell it for $50. Quick Google search, can I sell this for $50? At least as a starting point to understanding where I kind of want to be. And the reason being is because you have $1 for the product, you have $1 for an employee, you have $1 for electricity, you have $1, you have everywhere, there's $1 going everywhere. So you want to be able to have enough room. And instead of 1 to 2 or 1 to 3, honestly, I like 5. 5 makes me feel comfortable. To reference also, part of this is $20 is my favorite price for a product. It's most people's, especially if they're selling a lot of products. But that means, if I'm buying it for $4 or I'm making it for $4, I can do 20. Now, if I think I'm going to do volume, then yes, I can do 10. I can sell it for 20. There's a marketing issue. Am I doing wholesale? Is it a short-term product? Is it a long-term product? But for most people, I think in the beginning, you just want to start with the 5 and see where it takes you. Now, why so much focus on marketing? Again, if no one knows how good you are, you're not going to be doing business for very long. So you have to leave room for marketing. And it's absolutely critical that you focus on advertisement, on marketing. And there's actually an amazing person here who does marketing and advertisement in the group. Maria, I think is her name on Zoom. Trust me, it is extraordinarily important to set aside money for marketing, because no matter how good you are, people have to know. Now, why so much focus on storage? Again, it depends what you do. It really does. And if you're talking about a service, if you're talking about, you're a hairdresser, maybe you're a mobile hairdresser, for example, or mobile stylist or barber, for example, you may not need the storage. Garage may satisfy you with what you need. But if we're talking about actually maximizing efficiency and maximizing growth, developments, profits, you need room. So whenever you are looking at products that either are yours or somebody else's, think to yourself, can I store enough of this? And where can I store it? Now I want to get into a couple weird ones for you so you understand better to price your product. Do you remember the door lock light? This is a no, you probably don't remember the door lock light because it failed so miserably. It was basically an LED light, battery operated, and it kind of double-side taped to the doorknob on top of the doorknob, I think, of a door. So like when you got home, it was automatic. It turned on as soon as you when you pulled the key out to try to get to the lock. That way you could see it at night. Whoever designed it did such a bad job that the batteries ran out in a day. It wasted power when it was off. And as an electronics designer, I saw the schematic and I'm like, who did this? And yeah, sure enough, it was out of China. It was made so badly, they recalled every single one of them and lost their shirt. They lost so much money, it wasn't even funny. And it was so overpriced, thankfully for them, that they were able to get some money in the beginning. And even though they recalled all of them and paid everybody back, they still had a little bit of money that it wasn't as bad. But it was incredible. They went out of business. So when you are pricing your products, you have to make sure also it's good. Always, don't just buy something and then assume it works. make sure that you're relying on good people, good businesses. If you need somebody to take a look at something, pay them. For instance, any electronic designer would have seen that schematic or that door lock light and would have been, nope, not gonna do it. And that was an easy one, and it cost them millions. So definitely know what you're getting. Now the Pitchman, I love these people. If you remember Billy Mays, he died, but he was the one that did OxyClean. They had a competition. It was a pitch competition, and you had 30 seconds to pitch your idea. If they liked it, they would buy it, or they would get into business with you. I remember Billy's comment. He goes, "We need to get the." He always said, $20. That's my price point. $20. That's what I want to sell it for. This guy comes in. He's got this strap harness. Basically, it's for moving furniture, and it wrapped around his shoulders and his waist. I think you put the strap underneath the furniture, and you could pick it up just with your body. You didn't have to use your hands. Fantastic concept. Honestly, it was brilliant the way he did it. And Billy goes, "Well, what's the cost of this?" And the guy goes, "Well, it cost me about $79 to make." He goes, "Whoa. Now $80 times 5, well, now you know my price point. There's no way in the world." But Billy goes, "We want to get this down to like $20. Can we do it?" And the guy pitching said, "Well, no, everything, it costs this, I have to use this, I have to use this." And Billy asked him again, and the guy goes, "No, I can't do it." And he goes, "Last time, can we get this down to $20 sell price? I love the concept, I love the idea, I want to buy it, but can we get it down to $20? The guy said no. So he left, didn't actually get to sell his product. The reason why this one's critical is because he ended up not selling this product to Billy Mays and the other guy. And I remember 6 months later seeing a very similar product in the stores for $20. It made a ton of money. It wasn't his product, and it wasn't the pitchman who actually took the product. Somebody else said, "Hey, that's a great idea. Let me see if I can tweak it and sell it for $20. Now, the reason why this is important is because, one, he loved his product, obviously, but he lost it. He couldn't sell it. He also didn't understand the market. Nobody wants, unless you're a furniture mover, you don't need it. You want to go to a U-Haul, rent a truck, and buy some boxes, buy some tape, and buy that $20 product that you're going to use once. Because you're only moving stuff from house to house once. And then maybe years later you do it again. So another $20. But nobody needs a $300, $400 product like that, or a $150 product if you want to sell it for that little. You have to know your market. And does the product fit? Now, I don't know if anybody's familiar with Ron Papile. I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. I always call him Ronco. He was the gentleman, he was actually like the original pitchman. He did Set It and Forget It, if anybody remembers that. The reason why that was beautiful is it wasn't because you could actually set the oven or whatever it was, the rotisserie thing, and forget about it and leave and come back 2 days later or leave the house. The name of the machine was Set It and Forget It. You can't get better branding than that. You can't get better name and name recognition than that. Somebody ended up burning something down and tried to sue him. And he goes, "No, the name of the product is Set It and Forget It." And he won the lawsuit. Because what idiot leaves their house with something on? It was absolutely brilliant. So if you want to learn from people, learn from the pitchman, learn from Billy Mays, learn from Ron Papile. I mean, learn from those people who have been doing it for years. And in case you don't know who Set and Forget It is, if you remember, and I know most of you are going to be too young, but if you remember Hair in a Can, it was like the hair fibers, but in the hairspray can. That was him. And he made a ton of money off of it. It looked goofy. It was outrageous, but he made a ton of money off of it. It was also a short-term product. You don't see it anymore, not in that fashion. So understand your market. Now, the other thing, too, is learn from Maytag. I partnered up with a appliance repair business for a while. And I remember Maytag, and the guy that taught me everything that he knew about appliances, he told me this story, and I went back and validated it. Maytag, even in their financial statements, said if no one wants to own an appliance for 15 years, 30 years, why are we making them last that long? So they went back, they used inferior materials. They still are great machines, but they don't last 15 years. All of a sudden, it was 5 years before there was a problem. But they made a lot more money because they can actually sell a less expensive product and actually have a higher margin. So you have to know your market. You have to know what people actually want, and you have to be able to give it to them. And nobody complained because nobody was keeping the washing machines that long anyway. So learn from Maytag, learn from the Pitchman, including Rompopile. I mean, learn from these people because they've made their mistakes, but they've also are showing people how to be in business well. Now, last one is, last but not least, the Satisfries. The Satisfries, I think it was Burger King, and what they did was they tried to come up with a healthier version of a French fry. And it was healthier, but no one understood why. And it was also more expensive. So they lost their shirt and they stopped selling the Satisfries. They were also harder to make. It was a horrible idea. But not only was it more expensive, but you have to know your market. No one wants healthy French fries when they're going to a fast food place. They'll get the Diet Coke, sure, and they'll get a smaller fries, but they don't want healthy fries. And even with the meatless options of hamburgers out there, they're not doing as well as the regular hamburger. So you have to know your market. Okay, now, any questions?